So if you watched my video from the last week about using the wrecker bar to break down pallets, this is the outcome of a dozen pallets. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stacks of wood in various sizes. Everything has been denailed just as a safety precaution. I do have the magnetic wand to go over the boards just to make sure. Today I'm going to be milling the wood up, so I will be using that to make sure I didn't miss any nails, because I don't want to ruin any of my equipment, whether it's my jointer or my planer. So let me set up the jointer, and I'm going to put a straight edge on one side, then I'll use the table saw for the opposite edge. All right, so I've got my benchtop jointer set up here. It's a Delta Shop Master. Thing's probably about 10 years old, but it still gets the job done. So as long as it's working, I'm going to keep using it. Anyway, I've got this set of wood stacked up and ready to go. I have checked it using the metal detector to make sure I did not miss any nails. This wood is ready. I'll look at each board and see which is closest to the flat edge, and then I'll run one of those edges across the jointer here to get it a definite flat edge. Then next step will be moving to the table saw.
A few moments later.
The widest slats I've already done. They've all been milled down to, they've all had a straight edge put on one side. Now my plan is to run these through the table saw and cut them into 2.5 inch strips. Majority of these boards are right at 5 inches wide, so I'm hoping to get roughly 2 strips per board. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and set it up. We'll get started.
Okay, so recently I just replaced, once we got moved down here, that is, replaced the surface of my workbench. And in this process, I'm going to have to cut a sheet of plywood down to 3 foot by 5 foot. I don't want to damage the table. So a trick I learned from watching some other YouTubers: take a thick sheet of styrofoam, lay that over the surface of your table, and then when you cut, you score into the styrofoam as opposed to your table. Not a bad idea. I've done it before, in my last shop, and it worked out really well. Let me get this sheet of plywood laid up here. All right. Go. Went to the blue big box store and got their flattest sheet of plywood. Looks great, doesn't it? All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be cutting this 4 foot by 8 foot down to 3 foot by 5 foot, and this will be the backer for the headboard with the pallet wood slats attached to it in the chevron pattern. So let me get my lines laid out here, and we'll start laying out the boards. Okay, so since I've got this potato chip here, what I went ahead and did is took some clamps to clamp it down to the table to try to get it as flat as I can. So got a 4 foot by 8 foot. What I want to do is measure down 5 feet on the length. I'm going to add 1 1/4 inches because that's the difference from the edge of my circular saw to the blade width, because I'm going to be clamping a straight edge to this. Don't have a track saw, but this is just a good example. You don't need a track saw to get all of these straight cuts made. All right, here's my 5 1/4 foot mark. Go 1 extra inch and 1/4. Put a mark there. Go around and do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So basically we're marking this at 61 1/4. Got my 2 marks. Let's see. Tighten that up just a little bit. Straight edge guide, pretty handy. Like I said, kind of takes the place of the track saw. And honestly, before the track saws were around, the straight edge was being used in place of it. Okay, so there we go. All right, here goes. All right, that potato chip's curling up there, so we know we're all the way through. All right, now this next cut's going to be a little bit more manageable, so we'll take it on the table saw. Now, in theory, the plywood potato chip should be 4 foot wide. If that's the case, I just need to cut 1 foot off. And we're within about a 32nd of an inch of being 48. So they actually did that one pretty good. All right, take this piece away, save it for later. All right, let me get the table saw set up and we'll switch angles. Set my rip fence at 3 foot. Again, like I mentioned, we just want to cut 1 foot off. Go ahead and get this set up. Oh, excuse me, this is already set up. Let's go ahead and get this piece cut off. All right, and yes, I did forget to wear my safety glasses. Luckily, it wasn't too bad and came out unscathed. All right, looks like we're gonna have to anchor this back down to the work surface again. Then all 4 corners are peeling up on this one, so hopefully once we get the wood slats placed on there, this won't be such an issue. So let me anchor it down. We'll get our grid lines going and get started placing some wood slats on here. All right, as I mentioned, this will be the backer for the headboard for the slats to get attached to. So I'm not real worried about some holes, but this thing's just wavy as crazy. You can go surfing on this thing. So I'm gonna anchor to the tabletop, a couple short screws so I can get my grid lines laid out. Okay. So let's find the center point. All right, we are at 5 foot, so we can find 30 inches. Come around on 30 inches on this side. Okay, try not to get my shoulder in the camera. Okay. So 30-inch mark here. Okay, so now we're going to go with 36. So that's what we wanted, 3 foot. Halfway point's going to be 18 inches. Come over to this side. 18 inches here. All right. So, oh, there it is. Double check my measurement. It looks like my pencil line is off. Okay. And yes, I marked it 30. Let's see, what did I mark out on this side? 30. Okay. Myself a new reference point because I am off by a little bit there. Okay. Just so I can see my lines better. Okay. All right. There's the center point going that way. And then after the last line, let's double check again. Okay. All right. All right. We now have our center point. Now, the chevron pattern actually comes off of the center at a 45. I'm going to take my framing square, place it right on the line. I'm going to draw line straight out. And from the point and come straight out. And come straight out. All right, so now we have our center point. We have our 45s for our slats. And the way this will work is cut 45-degree angle across the end of this slat, and we'll run this board to the edge. We'll continue repeating that pattern back and forth and going around the circle. So let me get the miter saw set up here. Okay, so I'm back today. Had a mishap there. Had to miscalculated the depth of the slats and the thickness of the plywood. And for my pin nails, I got 1 inch, and I actually needed to get 3/4 inch because they were going through the back pretty bad. So I've got my pin nails. I'm ready to get started. I've done a preliminary layout using my grid. Got my boards off to the side here. So without any further ado, I'm going to get started laying this out and try to get this headboard finished up today. Okay. Okay, so I flipped the board over. The pallet slat side is face down. The plywood is face up. My plan is I'm going to use the lip of the plywood to go as close to as I can with my battery operated circular saw, and I'm going to clean up the edges going around the perimeter. I did have a few of these nails punched through. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but anyway, I've got the depth of the saw ready to go, so let's go ahead and get this edges trimmed up. All right, got a few here that didn't go all the way through. I'll take my pull saw and clean those edges up. And sounds like I need to grab the other battery off the charger. Okay, so to seal this wood up, I'm just going to use some Minwax quick drying, or excuse me, fast drying polyurethane. So let me get my stir stick out here. We'll get this stirred up. Probably just going to fast forward through this. It's pretty self-explanatory what I'm doing here. All right, so the plan for today is to go ahead and take the 1x wood, which is the only wood I will be using that is not from the pallets, to do the frame. I'm going to rip these down into 1¼ inch strips. That way the frame will only come just a little above the surface. After I've got it trimmed down, I'll go ahead and put a stain on it, and then we'll cut the miters and frame it around the headboard. So let's go ahead and get to ripping. Okay, so I've got the table saw set up to rip my 1¼ inch strips from the 1x4s. Got a little PPE here just to do things properly. All right, here we go. Okay, at this stage, I've got the 1x1¼ inch strips laid out here and ready for stain. We'll do this relatively quick, so we'll probably fast forward through this. Pretty sure everybody knows how to apply wood stain. So here we go. All right, let that set up. Come back, trim it down, and frame out our headboard. Okay, so there's plenty of videos on showing how to cut miter corners. So I've gone ahead and cut my miters, laid them out with my angle squares. Everything's close to perfect. I've got one off that's just a slight bit off over here, but this is for my home, so unless I tell anybody, they probably will never know. Anyway, next step is to go ahead and get all of these sides anchored on. So I'm going to go ahead, run a bead of glue. We'll pin nail this on, give that a chance to set up. And then the next step after that will be to get this thing mounted on the wall. So, all right, so I made a minor mistake there. I forgot to hit record as I was going around and attaching the frame. I had mentioned that there's plenty of videos out there on how to do miter corners, and therefore I didn't show that step anyway. But pretty simple design. As I mentioned earlier, I cut these strips to 1¼ inches. I use wood glue and brad nails to attach it to the perimeter. This is the design, the finished design. I still have to attach the cleat on the back. The next step right now, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go mark the studs on the wall in our bedroom above our bed. And then we'll get this thing hung and we'll be finished with this. Okay, so I've taken the measurements of the height of the bed to the height of the headboard itself. And I've determined that 5 feet off the floor should give me about 8 inches clearance above it. And it should match either right at the head of the bed or just a little above or below. I was dealing with fractions. I was trying to do it on the fly, so I hope I did it right. Anyway, we've got the French cleat here. I've got it drilled into the studs. So I'm going to go get the headboard, bring it in, and we'll see how it looks. All right. There we have it. Slide it over. All right. There it is up on the wall. I think it needs to come over just a little bit more. My wife's want the level and alignment, so she may decide we want to move it just a little bit further when she gets home. So, all right. Push the bed back up. Forgive my shoulder. There we go. It's about right. I wanted it about 1 inch above the bed. I think we're pretty close to that. I was kind of worried it'd go down behind it and then the sheets would get stuck on it as we made the bed. But I'm happy with that. There's my finished product. Palletwood headboard. Appreciate you joining in. And hopefully if you've enjoyed this video, you can give me a like, thumbs up, and tune in for my next palletwood project, which will probably be bedside tables for this bedroom. Because right now we're using the plastic Tupperware drawers from Walmart. Thanks a lot.